their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of News Web Radio Company or its management.
All right, thanks for tuning in. Life, Love, and the Grind. You got Sean Allen, and today joining me, the incredible Sarah Sadat.
Thanks, Sean. I think it's been an amazing week since we've been here. I know I say this every single week, but
it's been a nice summer so far. It's been hot. I've been enjoying lots of lake and pool time, but it's good to be back and sitting next to you.
Aw, thank you. You know what? This is probably the best summer that I've had. The fact that I'm at home, I can go and I can chill and I can still kind of spend a lot of time with the family. I don't think I haven't looked forward to like taking the top down of my Jeep and riding in the summer as much as I have this particular summer.
Well, it's been a crazy year. 2020 is one for the books in probably every bad way we can imagine. And today we got two good guests that are going to talk about kind of their experiences with all this coronavirus and rioting, looting. You know, it's been absolutely nuts. But you know what? Hopefully we're coming out of this somewhat stronger and somewhat a little better.
For sure. You know what? Both of our guests, I think, have been in the industry for a while, and they both come with different ideas to the table. The first one that we have is Scott Metzger, and he is a video journalist. Hey, Scott, are you on with us?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Scott, thanks for joining us. So Scott Metzger, 18-year video journalist, and your main focus is on terrorism, wars, and kind of the backlash and maybe some of these explosive times that we have. Is that kind of accurate?
It's basically throughout the history, which I've been tracking through and everything, is basically the unknown of domestic terror and plots and threats and everything that's going on throughout history. You know, and 2020 is no exception. Especially now in these times where it's really interesting. It's been very hard this year, so it's been a very interesting year, I have to say.
Has this been one of the crazier years that you've experienced in the last maybe, 18 years? I mean, is this kind of one for the record books? Has it been more explosive than you've seen?
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it with coronavirus and everything, too, because with this virus going around and everything, too, we only read this in the history books. But now we're experiencing it, and too, and it's just an unusual event. I mean, people aren't really used to these type of things, and so people aren't used to wearing masks all the time and everything. You got social distance, and can't usually do the same things that we've always been doing. Especially in the summertime, we go to the pool or we go to the beach and everything. Too, we like going on vacations. That's just those are extremely limited now.
Well, and you know what? And for the people in the Midwest who live 9 months a year in rain, cold, and just horrible weather. I mean, we live for these June, July, and August months. So to be told that you can't do this and you can't go there, I mean, it is very difficult because we all kind of struggle with bad weather. So when it gets gorgeous, and of course this summer is like the hottest one we've had in a while, it's hard to be locked in. It's hard to just be told to just stay home and stay away from each other. I mean, people want to get out and about.
Oh, absolutely. When we're out there, covering stories, especially in Chicago, the streets are just empty, and it's just weird and unusual. We're used to seeing like a bustle amount of people, especially around the summertime, and restaurants are closed, and, especially on the beach around Lake Michigan is closed, the walkway and all this, it's just, it's just empty, and people want to get out there and everything, too, they want to go out to restaurants. I mean, the big movie theaters, too, that are, coming out, those are closed and people just can't go do that. And so it's very frustrating for these people. So, I mean, they get frustrated, too. And then there's a lot of misinformation out there with, if do the mask works or do they don't work. So when people get frustrated, they get angry very easily. People don't want to wear a mask, and then then it just explodes because people are frustrated because they just can't do the usual things that they used to doing throughout their life. So it's very different.
So tell us a little bit about your book and kind of like tying into the historic aspects of where we have been and where you see us kind of going.
Well, we're seeing an increase of like threats and anti-government type of atmosphere right now, especially during these times, with mixing in with the coronavirus, wearing the mask, and some government officials are saying wear the mask, and they see some of this as a representative of basically of government control. They see this as as a government takeover. Something like if you don't do this, then we're going to come and place you under arrest, or you're just going to be taken out of the house. Or some people just see this as some type of operation that is going to suppress the American people. And sometimes, and there's a lot of misinformation out there that takes people, that don't understand what really is going on, and there's a lot of information that people just don't get. So, I mean, it does tie in sometimes with, with the lockdown and everything, as we see throughout, throughout the United States, especially like in Michigan, where, they protested the lockdown and everything, too, and they say this is some sort of repression. So, I mean, some people, take it out, and, on the government, they say this is, not a very good thing. So which is in their right to protest and everything, but there's a lot more, out there sometimes on social media, where, if you follow and you track them and everything, too, they don't really believe what's going on, or they believe this is some type of, Chinese attack, or there's all kinds of things that, they see as just some type of conspiracy that will that will try and take over the United States of America.
Yeah, so everybody loves a good conspiracy theory. I mean, I think I grew up on Mel Gibson's conspiracy theory when I was younger. Yeah. But what is it particular to today's pandemic? I mean, without giving away too much about your book, can you kind of give us a little bit of a teaser as to what your book really talks about? What is that one particular thing that's like the main hook that you can get the rest of your listeners kind of in to kind of tune in and be like, all right, hey, I do want to look into the eyes of Mel Gibson as I continue to read this book.
Right. And well, there's no question my book will go over to some, there will be a lot of plots and attacks that some people are not really familiar with. We all know about September 11th. That's without a doubt, that's the most memorable terrorist attack in U.S. history, if not world history. And then the second one would be the Oklahoma City. But there are some that are very, very surprising when I was looking this up. For instance, the San Joaquin militia called the Twin Sisters plot in Elk Grove, California. And basically what this is, these militia members were going to go after these two propane tanks. These are 12 million gallon propane tanks, and there was two of them. And the plot was, they called them the Twin Sisters, and that was the code name for it. So what the mission and what they were trying to do is, once they set this off, they wanted to create an insurrection with the United States government. So they wanted the United States government to declare martial law, and hopefully that would get other militia members to join their cause in taking over the government. Now, if this was successful, it was foiled by federal law enforcement and everything too. And if this would have been successful, the estimated casualties could have been 12,000 people. Now, this would have been more than September 11th if this would have worked, because where this propane factory was it was right next to a highway, and it was right next to a living facility. And if it would have gone up, the catastrophic damage would have been unreal. So I was reading this and I was wondering, why haven't I heard this before and everything? Because a lot of the times when some things like this go on, it's not usually nationalized. It's usually just very local and everything too. And sometimes it's just not picked up by national media and everything. Lately, we have been seeing a little bit more as we go on. But back then and everything, it was not really that known.
Well, and social media has to have a huge factor in everything that we kind of see and live now. I mean, social media dictates, everyone's kind of thought process. It's kind of sad. Most people, that's where they get their political, they get their news, and you don't even know what's really factual or not anymore. There's just so much coming at you that people are just constantly sharing it, and everything becomes viral in a matter of minutes or hours.
Oh yeah, exactly. And back then, this was back in the late 90s and everything, the internet and everything was just coming into its infancy. So, so right now you're right that we can pick this up in a matter of seconds. We get more knowledge as it goes on, but back then it wasn't very knowledgeable and everything, and access and like the information was very limited too. So while looking at all these things up and everything, I was just shocked and surprised of how many of these plots have and everything, and it goes without controversy too. I mean, some people may look at this and say, well, some of these people may be crazy, or they're just not very, they're not very knowledgeable or anything like that of what was going on. And so some of these plots were just talk or something like that. And a lot of the times they weren't.
Yeah. So now kind of fast forward to today, kind of this 2020. I mean, from the 90s to now with this Antifa or the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean, you kind of have this radical on both sides. Then you have the marches in Charleston where, you have Nazis and, white supremacists running down the streets. I mean, where is all this coming from? I mean, is all this kind of this almost like homegrown terrorism
or like, is there some kind of a big bad brother that's orchestrating all of this?
Or is this social media world kind of pushing this narrative that's getting all these people fired up to go take to the streets? I mean, listen, I'm a union rep, I'm a union guy. My job, I'm a professional protester. We do pickets and all that, but we've never had violent pickets and violent protests. And, where does all this come from?
Well, it comes from the propaganda from extremist websites, because before they would used to go to, like, they would have marches, or they would have, a whole entire event and everything, too, especially with the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan basically would, do these rallies and everything, and they would just get more and more resistance. So it wasn't working for them. So the next thing, what they did was they went out and did stuff online. And this was such an easier tool for them to do. I mean, for example, Dylan Roof, he was radicalized online. That's how he got all of his information. And a lot of these people do get these information, such as the Pizzagate thing, where people pay attention to all these conspiracy theories and they start believing it. And, they isolate themselves inside their room and they start following more and more. It's a way of recruiting and the propaganda. I mean, a lot of people, sometimes these days don't look at multiple sources to see if this is accurate. They just usually go to their favorite, and then they usually believe it.
Well, and it definitely can warp your brain. I mean, I remember when it was like, if you watch CNN all day, every day, that's going to warp your brain. And then it's like, well, if you're watching Fox News every day, that's going to warp your brain. And it's like this battle of left and right. Well, now I'm like, if you're on Facebook all day, every day, if you're on Instagram, like these things are going to warp your brain.
If you're on Facebook, Sean, every single day, then you listen to Life, Love, and the Grind.
Well, and that's
it. That's all you do.
And that's the only place you should be getting your information, actually. Good save, Sarah.
No, you're welcome. But honestly, there's so much information out there. And the reason why I think we were super interested in actually bringing you on is you're a video journalist, right? So you have that integrity to report to the media what it is that is biased, it's unfiltered, it's raw, and it's credible news, right? How does like the regular public out there, how can we weed out from these weird conspiracy theories to what is actually factual?
And that's the big question too, because a lot of people these days now can't or don't know the difference between propaganda and an actual fact. They get the two mixed up because they mix up what's happening in the news, and then they mix it with an own ideology. What we do basically, we're not going off ideology, we're going by the report of what happened. But when people see that, they go up online and they get the two mixed up between the two, and then the facts are just kind of like you were saying before, it gets warped. And so when you look up, especially like, some of like the extremist websites and everything, too, and they'll do a local report and then they say, well, that didn't actually happen. You guys didn't really there, especially with school shootings. Everyone knows when you go on there and then you report what's happening and everything, it's child actors, or these are all things that are just made up. These are the reports that are here to take away our guns, or it's a lot of these things. But where does it come? I mean, then that's the main question. Why would people mix those two things up? And we can always tell them until we're blue in the face that here's what we're reporting and everything, too. And they say, well, you guys are just fake. It's not real.
Yeah, so go to a credible news source,
Yeah.
make sure you fact check, make sure you're, again, asking for questions. But you're absolutely right. In a situation like where we are right now, where the news changes on a minute by minute basis and the data changes on a day to day basis, how does one even stay abreast of all of this? I think that's like an ongoing question that I continue to have. And I'm sure you as journalists, you as reporters, get this all the time. Where do you go and find your sources? I think that's like the biggest concern.
And there's a political narrative pushing all the sources. I mean, these political narratives, I mean, listen, whether you're left or right, that political narrative is driving exactly what they want you to think, period. So,
Right.
it's like one's right, one's wrong, and it's just a left and right fighting back and forth. Where do you find actual factual reporting in journalism versus, well, this is my opinion, but this is what we're going to push out to everybody?
Right. And I always say, like, sometimes you have to set aside, like, maybe the mainstream stuff and everything. I always say, well, let's look at maybe the Associated Press, and then if the Associated Press is going, maybe we should look at maybe a local TV station or a newspaper that's there and looking at its source, and look after that source, and then just check that source, and then that source. So, I mean, it's not just going off of one or two outlets of, like, the usual, maybe like the cable news outlets, and then let's check it. But then what happens is, what I do is, one of the go-to things is I go to, let's say, the Associated Press. Okay, the Associated Press says that, okay, let's check maybe this local aspect. Where did this kind of situation happen? Let's go to that town. What TV stations, what's local TV stations are they saying? Maybe the newspaper there is going there too. And if the law enforcement or federal law enforcement has already sent out, let's say, a report, well, let's check out that report and see what they're saying that too. Because sometimes the details can be wrong. I mean, journalists sometimes make mistakes. That's why we do retractions and say, okay, this isn't right. Here's what actually happened.
Yep. So fascinating. I mean, this is one of the things that I think I continue to kind of go forward with. And for those that are listening, we will be right back as soon as we hear from some of our sponsors. We have Jill Weeks coming up, who's pretty much the person behind Trace Mimi, and we'll tell you a little bit more about it as soon as we get this word in from our sponsors.
This is Lewis Carter from GWC Injury Lawyers. Now that cannabis is legal in Illinois, an understanding of the law and the risks associated with ingesting cannabis is critically important. Under the Cannabis Act, you can legally ingest marijuana only in a very limited number of places. Not in public, not on government or school premises, and not even in your own condo or apartment if your landlord has a no smoking policy. A positive test is potentially lethal to your rights in 3 key areas: employment, work injuries, and driving. So if your employer has a zero-tolerance drug and alcohol policy, you can be terminated if you fail a drug test, even though your cannabis consumption was legal. If you're hurt on the job and test positive for cannabis, the legal presumption is that your accident was caused in part because of the cannabis, and your workers' compensation rights can be totally denied. DUI laws have not changed. Impaired means impaired, and a DUI due to cannabis or alcohol can ruin your career. If you want to indulge in legal THC before you ingest, read up on your rights at gwclaw.com.
Megan Financial is an independent retirement and financial services firm dedicated to the working men and women of organized labor. Megan provides straightforward, custom-fit financial advice and specializes in defined benefit and defined contribution pension plans, as well as participant and retiree health and welfare benefits. Megan Financial has the knowledge and experience to navigate the union member through all phases of life. Call 708-444-1090.
Securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors LLC, member FINRA, SIPC, a broker-dealer and registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. Office location at 5321 South 94th Avenue, Orland Park, Illinois, 60462.
All right, if you're just tuning in, you got Life, Love, and the Grind, Sean Allen and Sarah Sadat. We just heard from Scott Metzger, 18-year video journalist, author. He was talking about the focus on kind of, these kind of terrorist groups and kind of the craziness that's been going on for a long time, but especially now in this 2020 COVID where we have, marches, protests, looting, and then these Antifa groups that are growing and these Black Lives Matter movements that are kind of going around. It's kind of some crazy times. But now we're going to hear from Jill Weeks, founder of Très, a clothing company for women. And let's hear from Jill on how she's been able to kind of do some positive in an otherwise kind of crazy time. Jill, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
So tell us, how's it been in 2020 during the Corona world?
Oh, it's been just as much fun. I think you guys summed it up really well. There are days that are amazing when I'm with my family and children. And then there are days where we're doing a lot of questioning as to what can we do to help and what can we do more, and people are in need and crisis is happening. So yeah, I think it's definitely there's sort of two sides to the way we're living right now.
So tell us about this Très. How did you kind of get involved with all that? And how has this been kind of beneficial for, young or older women especially during this coronavirus COVID world?
Well, I was a fashion designer working for a company for 20 years, and I just was looking for kind of giving back to my community more. And it's really, I just had left for a startup, and that startup was a pretty quick live startup. And I sort of was questioning about what I was going to do next. I had known that I had wanted to do more than just sell clothing, but I didn't really know what that meant. So I was doing a lot of research about how I could help and how I could help women. And it occurred to me that I felt very fortunate for what I have, and what I was wondering what that was like for someone who might have my choice was to leave my job, and I thought I was going to do something great, and then all of a sudden I wasn't getting a paycheck, and what did that mean? And I was lucky that I knew I was going to have my house. I had a loving husband and a good family, but it frightened me because what if I didn't have them? What would that look like? And that was how I formed my company, was some way to give back. And when I was doing a lot of research, I learned something very interesting, which I didn't realize, which I suppose I should have, is you guys probably donate clothing, right?
Yeah, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. But you probably don't donate your underwear.
Not so much.
Not so much, right.
Not as much as I should, probably.
Yeah, so this is a big problem for shelters and for women fleeing domestic abuse, actually. And when I learned that, I started to think about, I've been a designer. I've been someone who's been dressing like my Barbie dolls and my dog or whatever since I've been a little girl. It's been inside me to do. And when you put your underwear on, it's sort of that first thing you put on and the last thing you put on. It's sort of that shield that protects you from the world outside. And I would imagine for these women who are really starting a life over or trying to, and dealing with these incredibly emotional decisions that they have to make for themselves and their family, that if you didn't have that foundation, how could you feel good about yourself? And so I really sort of latched onto that emotionally. And then I learned that if a shelter does get underwear, it often doesn't fit well. And that, to me, I'm a master fitter. I've been fitting clothing my whole life. And that to me felt terrible. So I said, I can fix this. And so my idea was to partner with shelters to be sure that we're donating actual underwear that can be used and be worn and make women feel good.
Jill, as you're talking, I'm getting like shivers up and down my spine. It's incredible. And again, it's one of those things that, unless you're in that situation, you don't necessarily realize what the essentials are of a day-to-day being. Things like toothbrush, toothpaste, things like underwear. These are the first things that, you kind of wrap yourself around and you start as a foundation. And just to hear you say that, not only should we be providing underwear, we should be providing different sizes of underwear. underwear for everybody, right? So just to take that one thing off of somebody's checklist as they're going to get up to kind of face their abuser in court or in another setting, as they're already survivors at this point, why not treat them with more than that, right? So I think this is just something that when I found out about what it is that you do, I was kind of over the moon in getting you trying to become part of the show, because everyone should know that when you're out there, when you're in a situation such as your own person in your own house and you're trying to get away from them, you don't necessarily think about grabbing your toothbrush. You don't necessarily think about grabbing your underwear. And I'm grateful for people like you who are out there thinking about the greater good for the economy.
Well, the one thing we love to do on the show is shine a spotlight on the people that are actually giving back. And we like doing that, especially with businesses. And we appreciate all that you're doing, because you know what? We need more people to help out. And that's kind of, we want to shine a light on the people doing that work.
So how many shelters and what are the locations that you currently work in? And have you seen and again, I'm one of those people that ask like 500 questions all at once because I just want to get it out there. But like, how many, have you seen a rise and increase during coronavirus time for the need that exists within these shelters?
Oh, the need is huge. In fact, so we are a startup company. We just started in November, and we had done an initial underwear drop of 500 pairs to Wings program. And then we were hoping to expand. That basically gives them just about a year. And so we were hoping to do another underwear drop when COVID hit. And Wings reached back out to us and said, we have a big problem. We have to close down our our houses for these women. We have to scatter them to the wind. We need food. We need medicine. We need cleaning supplies. What can you do to help us? And this is something I'm personally very proud about, because I did not want to do a company that was a one-to-one, just sell underwear and give underwear. I wanted to be a company that really can make a difference. And we just immediately answered their call, and we said, okay, we're not going to donate that next drop of underwear. You guys need food. You need medicine for these children who are with these women. And we just dumped it all. We took all of our resources that was going to be underwear, and we did a huge, we had customers that matched us, and we donated to Wings. So it's a huge need. The news for women fleeing domestic abuse right now is really, really scary. And federal funds are declining drastically. And that to me is something that is so wrong. I am a firm believer in helping other women and helping people get back on their feet. And how do we turn our backs and walk away from that? That's not the way of my grandmother, who was the namesake for the company, ever would have been. She was one of the few precious women of her time who worked in Cabrini Green. She raised family. And that was how I was raised, is that we do whatever you can. And so after we did that, the whole mask thing started coming out. And that, believe it or not, is still a huge issue. So like we've donated over 700 masks. And we are partnering now with the University of Illinois and Black Girls Break Bread through their public health department of University of Illinois, their Moms for Masks program. People aren't making as many masks at home. It's summertime. They're out enjoying the sun. So we're doing like a direct donation and hoping to provide a lot more masks for these moms and prenatal and postpartum moms that need them.
Oh, that's incredible. But, just to kind of go back a little bit, we talk about like the struggles during COVID and, kind of the lockdown and everything. But really, I really don't think there could be anything worse than going into a stay-at-home order in a very toxic relationship or a very kind of dangerous relationship. So, you mentioned about how domestic abuse is on the rise, and it's a really terrible thing. I mean, here you are maybe going through a divorce, almost finalizing out of a bad marriage, and now all of a sudden you're forced to kind of be stuck together for months, and now you can't even go to the courthouses. Everything was shut down. I mean, that's a pretty scary feeling to be forced to live with someone that you're maybe been fearing for your life for months or years. And
Yeah, but Sean, the people that are helping the domestic abuse survivors, they haven't been in lockdown. They're not in a shutdown mode.
Mhm.
They're continuing to operate. They're continuing to take people in. The police department has been vital in going to a lot of these homes and de-escalating a lot of these situations. Sometimes it takes only a matter of just having somebody else to talk to. And a lot of these shelters have pivoted and they have gone on virtual, just connecting with volunteers to the survivors, the domestic abuse victims that are kind of going through this, right? So just having that somebody to talk to has been vital. The other thing that is continuing to happen is the emergency order of protections. They're still out there and they're still continuing to go forward. So if somebody is threatened, if somebody's life is in danger, the courts have not been shut down for that. There are routine cases that have been put on hold, but not this. But we bring it all the way back to Jill one more time. When the shelters do exist, there's a need for cleanliness. I mean, again, there's a need for clothing, there's a need for food, the basic necessities. And for a company like yours, Jill, for you to pivot and find whatever it is that is out there that is that's the demand, you're providing the supply chain of it. Are you able to kind of continue to pivot? What's your business model that's making you stay afloat in a time like this? Because you hear small businesses all the time either shutting down or having like a decrease in revenue, but it seems like you're continuing to evolve and see what the demand is out there and trying to meet it. What's your business plan? What is something that you can kind of shed light to for the rest of our small business owners that are listening?
Well, I'll be frank with you. I don't know what happens, in a few months, but what we've tried to do is pivot as much as possible. And that means being creative. So for us, we used to do these sort of party themed trunk shows where we'd get a bunch of women together in a house and we'd bring our clothing. We'd have like a trunk show and people would try on clothing and we'd talk about our mission of donating underwear and letting women see the underwear that we donate. Well, that's not very COVID friendly. So what do? We've done a lot of different things. We have coming up hopefully the weather will cooperate, we're going to do a Fashion for Good at a brewery. We're going to be turning to a completely e-commerce company where we're selling we're going to be selling on Etsy. And to be honest with you, if someone had said to me, you're going to be an e-commerce company before the pandemic would hit, I would say, oh yeah, I'm not going to do that. But I love my company so much. I love what we stand for. I'm just going to try really hard to do whatever I can to sell clothing. In truth, I need to sell the clothing in order to be able to do what I want to do. So that's what I'm trying to do. I hope anybody who's listening will shout us out on all of social media, visit our website. Our clothing is extremely environmentally friendly. It's all eco cotton. It's made in women-owned factories. We use completely 100% biodegradable bags. I've had my friends at the EPA check that out. I'm hoping that we can continue to sell clothing so that we can continue to do what I want to do. And we're going day by day, month by month.
Yeah, Jill, just so our listeners know, what is your website? And
where can they find you?
We've been talking about this for a while. The clothing is not just for domestic abuse survivors. It is for everybody. So how can we find you? Where can we go to look for you?
Sure. Our website is www.tresmimi.com. That's TRESMIMI.com. And one thing is the clothing sales drive the ability to donate to the shelter. So the clothing is beautiful. It's very comfortable. I'm going to put out a word here. We've also pivoted towards Zoom-worthy clothing. So we're making a lot of...
So what you're saying is business on the top and like pajamas on the bottom.
It's exactly that. Yeah. Actually, we had in the works like a skirt, and I was going to cut it, but a lot of our customers who I know are like, no, you can't cut the skirt. And I'm like, well, who's going to wear it? Where? And they're like, just keep it. So we are going to put out our first skirt, but we do have some really beautiful, like these very comfortable blouses with some really beautiful trimming that will look fabulous on Zoom. We have 2 t-shirts right now, or 3 t-shirts right now that look incredible on Zoom. Our fabrics are super comfortable. We have stretch linen,
Jill,
cotton linen blend.
Jill, you are a salesperson for sure. You have sold me on it. I'm gonna run upstairs and grab my husband's credit card and start ringing it out as we go.
She's already on tracemimi.com right now.
Yeah, we should do a code for your listeners. We have a really good code out right now, which is Summer Fun 20. So go ahead and write that down. Go to Trace Mimi, and we have a fantastic return policy because now we're e-commerce. So we believe in being able to touch and try on. And anybody is I like working with customers. So if you're not really sure what size you want to be and you want to ask me, I'm very easy to get in contact with. There's a contact page, and I watch my emails all the time and get right back to you.
All right, so that
we appreciate what you do. Obviously, this is tough times, and we appreciate you doing good things.
So the code was Summer Fun 2020, correct? Awesome.
Oh no, just Summer
Fun 20.
No, just Summer Fun 20.
All right.
Yeah, and we try and make it very easy to look good, to feel good, and to do good.
Yeah, well, can't go wrong there. Well, we're hearing from Jill Weeks. You got Sean Allen, Sarah Sadat. We're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to hear more from Jill, and then we're going to bring Scott Metzger back on. And we're going to kind of talk about kind of everything.
Yes.
2020, COVID craziness. But check out tracemimi.com, Summer Fun 20. Type in the code. It's for a good cause. Sounds like some good stuff. Good female clothing. We're going to go get Raza's credit card and go run it up. So we'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
Life, Love, and the Grind is proudly sponsored by Rich Lewandowski and our friends at Breaker Press, Chicagoland's top choice for union printing. We're a third-generation family-owned business that has been helping unions and political campaigns win since 1976. We've been involved in hundreds of winning elections, and we get our printed materials to you on time and on budget every time. Whether you're running for the courthouse or the White House, we will take you from concept to design and from print to mail or your supporters' front yards. Breaker Press can help you reach the voters you need. Call Rich at 773-852-5733 or email rich@breakerpress.com. For all of your political printing needs, visit us at breakerpress.com.
All right, Life, Love, and the Grind. If you're just tuning in, you got Sean Allen, Sarah Sadat. We've heard from Scott Metzger, Jill Weeks, and now we come back and we have all 4 of us. So we've heard the good, kind of the crazy, Jill's with Trace Mimi clothing, tracemimi.com, Summer Fun 20. You can type in that code. And Scott Metzger, 18-year video journalist, author. So I'm going to jump back to you, Scott, a little bit. So we talk about this kind of political narrative we're at, and we've talked about these stay-at-home orders. We went from stay at home and save lives to go out and protest or you're a racist. Where are we going with these, the future political narrative of this 2020?
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, I'm not sure if I have all the quite the answers but I mean, I think sometimes you have to take a step back and you have to look at like what we're actually doing to ourselves, I think, because we're all going to have different opinions. We're all going to have, especially political opinions. But, it's just, we have to start looking out for more of what we know is right and everything, too, because obviously violence is not going to help the situation. It's only going to get worse. I mean, so I think it's just important to take a step back and we have to start listening more to each other and to pay attention. And sometimes listening could be the greatest thing. Instead of reaching for a hateful rhetoric or anything, sometimes the simplest thing to basically, listening, calm everything down, it could be just a simple handshake, and just hear what people have to say. I mean, that's kind of what we do too. We report, but we also listen.
So definitely not a handshake during coronavirus
Well,
time. An elbow bump.
Stick
would
to
be
a
better.
fist bump during these times. But we get what you're saying. I mean, I think we need to just be a little bit more tolerant. I mean, right? I mean, it's so quick to.
Right.
I mean, if you want to change opinions, you got to have a conversation. If you want people to understand each other, you have to understand different cultures and kind of learn to coexist with that, and not just point the finger and blame and yell and scream.
Well, talking about a conversation, Jill actually has a question for you, Scott. Go ahead, Jill.
So, I mean, I just have two things. Number one, I think what you said just now, Scott, is to listen. I think one of the key components to us getting on together is to listen to our children, because I think they are really great source of empathy for everybody. They haven't learned any behaviors over time, and so that's one thing. Number two is, Scott, you mentioned something during your interview which I thought was interesting, which was to listen to the local news reports and the local television stations. And I had heard a report which is that a lot of the local television stations have been purchased by one big media company, and that these local television stations now can't do their own reporting. They often have to read exactly what's been given to them and not necessarily off the Associated Press.
Right, and you're right about that. One of the big ones that I think, if I'm right, is Sinclair. Sinclair is a big one in everything, but they also have like the more of a right-wing leaning concept and everything too. It is true that yes, some reports are sometimes controlled and everything, too, where you have to report this and everything, too. That is simply not really true. But I mean, a lot of people have Twitter and everything, too, of people like say of this narrative or anything like that. So it is. I mean, that is very true of what you just said.
Well, how much does money play a factor? I mean, you have these huge corporations, these multi-billion-dollar businesses, and they're kind of controlling this 99% working class people, but they're controlling the narrative. I mean, it's a 1% that's dictating everything we're seeing and hearing and listening to. Like we say, where do you go when everyone's on Facebook and social media, and we're drowning in information, but we're starving for some real knowledge? Where do we go? And like I say, is this going to get worse down the road with all this social media? Or do you think like Jill, you say, listen to our children. I mean, is this next generation going to kind of lift us out of this, or are they going to be this social media generation that takes it even too far, even worse?
They already are.
And they already are. I mean,
and they already are social media generation. I mean, it's a matter of where do you want to go to find out what it is that you're looking for.
Mhm.
We're already reading our books with a bias. Remember when all we had were books at our disposal? We were reading that with a bias. When you're watching the news, you're looking at it with a bias. You're only going to comprehend things that are going to be penetrating your head and your understanding of it. At the end of the day, it's not just about where you can go. It's about how you are going to be consuming things. You, as an educated consumer, should be looking at a vast majority of sources. Again, this is just in my humble opinion, but making that decision based on everything else that you're seeing before you. It's your duty to talk to your children and tell them what it is that they don't understand or they're not able to kind of comprehend. Again, it's during a time like this, there's a lot of books out there, Sean, that talk about race, that talk about gender inequality. And it's, a 7-year-old, there's content, there's books out there that you can talk to a 7-year-old about in a situation like this. So it becomes our due diligence to kind of go ahead and look at every single thing that's out there on social media, understand it, and then deliver that proper message back down.
It's interesting because I'm a old graduate of the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and the Art Institute just put out a beautiful list of books, children's books, that even talk about race. And one of them was one my mother had bought me. I think it's like from 1980. I don't remember when it was, but I mean, I think there's a lot of great children's books authors that talk about it, but children inherently don't have an ability to hate. And it's interesting where I feel if we start listening to them, they will often make a really great path for us to think differently. And I think one of the things I learned from this whole experience is, am I really do I really know enough? Am I really learning enough? And I see their engagement in learning, and I'm like, no, I need to go back and learn more.
Well, and it's so important to read. I mean, you have so many people, again, with social media, you have so many people with so many different opinions, but it's like, who are we listening to? I mean, whose opinion are we taking?
You're listening to Sarah Sadat and Sean Allen.
If you're not listening to
Love and the
if you're
Grind.
not listening to Life, Love, and the Grind, you're nuts, for one. But you got to tune into something positive. I mean, when everyone has a platform, that's great, but it also can be extremely dangerous. I mean, it could be some, person with an insane, amount of followers, 5 to 10 million followers with no idea of what he's talking about or what she's talking about, doesn't read, doesn't understand anything going on. So it really can be very dangerous. These social media platforms, are very dangerous. Like we were saying with you, Scott, earlier. I mean, these are where people are finding people online. I mean, like the KKK and these like terrorist groups, they're recruiting young men or young women into these groups via the internet and these social media platforms.
And yeah, that's right. I mean, they're also looking with a lot of people with military experience too, to help them with their cause and everything, too. But it's, it gets very dangerous when, they start recruiting people and they want to start, influencing more people. And then there's a saying on there too. It says, trade in your boots for suits, which means they want you to throw away the old garb of the racists, like, the skinheads with the boots and the skinheads, but they want you to wear suits and kind of blend into the normal society.
Well, and climb the social fabric, almost become the judges and the police and the teachers. I mean, they want to integrate with our society and push their agenda, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and then take that fear, convert it to how we can help bridge the systemic racism that we feel and that we see all around us. Put people of different colors and different thoughts and different backgrounds into leadership positions. Bring them back to the boardroom. Have them set our corporations, have them set the strategy for where it is that we're going to be heading. So again, it's fighting that tolerance and being vigilant and fighting that intolerance and being vigilant and continuing to drive the proper message of love and acceptance out there. And I think both of you have done a tremendous job of actually just opening our eyes and shedding light to some of the situations that we're in. We're kind of coming down to the bottom of our hour. So I want to give both of you enough chance to kind of talk about, promote your book, Scott, and let us know what the title is, where we can find it. And then we'll hand it off to Jill to talk a little bit more about how we can look for Trace Mimi. Go ahead, Scott.
Well,
are you still with us, Scott? Oh, man.
Right.
I think we just dropped
We
him.
might have lost Scott.
We must have lost him.
Jill, why
but
don't you
as we
go
kind of
finish us
catch up, you should be able to kind of find his information on our platform on Facebook as well as YouTube on Life, Love, and the Grind. Jill, are you still with us? All right. So both Scott and Jill, we will be coming in touch with you at the end of the hour with this. What do you have to say, Sean?
You know what? This is a great show. Scott had a great story. It hits home perfectly now with all this stuff going on in the press, the news, and like I say, this political narrative. Scott Metzger, 18-year video journalist. He's an author. Please look him up, Google him, find his book. And then Jill Weeks. I mean, doing good in a really kind of a hard time. I mean, giving back to women, can't go wrong with that. Being a small business owner, doing what's right. I mean, Lord knows it's tough as it is. But you can find her at tracemimi.com. Type in that code, SummerFun20. You know what? It's a great cause. It's for a great thing. And it's a great women's clothing line and a small business owner that's really about giving back to the community and giving back to women. I mean, it's really hard times. Me and you, Sarah, have always understood it. We've had a great opportunity to bring a lot of great guests on, including these two. And Life, Love, and the Grind, you can follow us on Facebook, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. And you can tune in to WCPT every Sunday, 3 p.m. I want to thank Scott and Joe. We lost them, again, technical difficulties in this crazy world. But, I want to thank Scott and Joe Weeks. Like I say, tracemimi.com. Type in that code SummerFun20. And Scott Metzger, you can find him on for his book and on his website. Look him up. And, thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Life, Love, and the Grind. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, everyone.